It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dennis Berkey, president of WPI. Dr. Berkey became the 15th president of WPI in 2004. His undergraduate and graduate degrees are in mathematics, and he has published research in applied mathematics and optimal control theory. His extensive experience in university administration has included both the development of science and engineering programs and initiatives in general education. He is a strong promoter of everything WPI, and it is my sincere pleasure this morning to invite him to give us a state of the university.
Thank you, Joyce, for the generous introduction and for all you and your colleagues in leadership of the Alumni Association are doing to serve WPI. I want to begin by congratulating all of our winners this morning with two comments. One is to tell you how much I appreciate the mercifully short remarks that each of you have made. Many of us were together in this same room last evening for the Athletics Hall of Fame introductions, and I can tell you it's a very different kind of occasion. We had long periods of time to listen to well-informed commentary from our award winners, and so this was a nicely succinct and elegant set of remarks, and I thank you for them. They were also remarks that really revealed the essence of what is so great about WPI, that it is a type of education that prepares young people so well to go out and lead and achieve and innovate and do all those things that our economy and our society need the next generation of leadership to be able to do to put things right in this country and get us back on the track. And I can't think of a more effective and potent kind of preparation than what our faculty in the context of the WPI plan do here day in and day out with our students. And those of you that were up here receiving awards are simply symbolic of the results of that wonderful type of education, and it's just always a thrill to be reminded of the excellence of what goes on this campus day in and day out. Now, I've been asked to speak to you about the state of WPI, and that's a particularly poignant request standing here on this occasion in 2009, because the last year has simply brought ravages to higher education. The economic collapse has been on the front page of the higher education journals ever since last fall, and many institutions have really had a very difficult time. So if you're curious to know where does alma mater stand today, that's a very reasonable question to ask. And so I will spend a little time at the outset talking to you about financial matters. I don't normally begin that way with alumni. I prefer to talk about students and academics and campus development, but times being what they are, I'm very pleased to give you a report, and I will quote one of my predecessors in the presidency when he was asked to comment on the state of WPI, and his speech was, "The state of WPI is good." End of speech. So I'll give you a little bit more color than that. When the economic collapse happened last fall, we realized right away there were a couple important things to do to protect WPI. Get our liquidity up and get our exposure down. No different than anybody else's, but I'm very pleased to tell you that our financial team was right out in front of this and very quickly put WPI in an even stronger position than we had been before things started to fall apart. We have about 1/3 of our long-term debt at variable rates, and those rates were hedged with what we now all worry about, swap-type agreements. But our CFO moved very quickly to get us out of those awful weekly reset auction markets into the more stable markets, and so those swaps have been very nicely secured. The other 2/3 of our long-term debt is at fixed rates, so we're doing just fine on that front. The endowment took a hit like everybody else's endowment did. It went from a high of about $400 million down into the mid-$200 million at the bottom of the trough. And because it's fairly aggressively invested under guidance from our trustee investment committee, it's already returned above $300 million. So it's headed back in the right direction. But that is a significant challenge for us going forward, because, of course, we use some of the earnings of the endowment for the operating budget at WPI. Now, fortunately, only 14% of WPI's operating budget comes from the proceeds of the endowment. So this is not nearly as big a factor as it is at some of the wealthier, larger institutions that have been in the headlines. But still, because we work on a trailing 3-year average, 1 year removed from that endowment, there are implications going forward for having to be able to manage that reduced inflow into the operating budget. Fortunately, the campus community responded very well. We all tightened our belts. We said, let's not spend any dollar that we don't have to spend. And the result of that frugality was a record high operating surplus for the year that ended on June 30th. We had an $8 million operating surplus on top of an operating budget of about $120 million. So it's about a 6% margin. It came at just the right time. And what that does is demonstrate our ability going forward to deal with these challenges that I was just referring to. As you know, some of the fancier, more famous, larger institutions with those huge endowments found themselves in very serious trouble, even having to go to the credit markets to take on large debt obligations simply to meet payroll. That did not happen at WPI. We took a deep breath early on and we said we're going to try to get through this without laying anybody off, and we are going to stay committed to our investments in the academic programs. So we had authorized 23 searches for new faculty last summer, and we sustained all 23 of those searches. Now, not every search concludes successfully every year, but I'm pleased to tell you we succeeded in recruiting 21 new faculty that joined us this fall. So we not only had a record operating surplus, we had a record high number of new faculty that joined WPI this fall. And there was a third record set, and that was we had a record high number of freshmen enter WPI this fall. Our admissions professionals, once they saw the economic collapse developing, said, you know, there's probably going to be implications on this for the yield on offers of admission. So instead of assuming the usual percentage of students that would accept our offers, let's hedge that down a couple of percentage points to make sure we can meet our goal, which was to welcome 850 freshmen this past fall. Well, when the dust settled from the admissions cycle, our yield had not dropped at all, and in fact, we welcomed 930 new freshmen this fall. That is a record high number, and that's, of course, a bit of a challenge for the faculty to be able to care for in the Dean of Students office and the residence hall system and so forth. But it's a wonderful class. It is the largest number of women we've ever admitted as freshmen. It's the largest number of underrepresented minority students. It's the largest number of international students. So it's not just numbers, it's quality and diversity of the class, and I'm very, very proud of that. You may wonder, how did you house those extra 80 students? And this is an interesting story, and it tells you that the innovation and creativity that we teach in the classroom applies as well to our professional staff. Janet Richardson and the Dean of Students staff went over and took a good hard look at Morgan Residence Hall and realized, you know, this is a marvelous building with very spacious double rooms, which don't seem as large as they actually are because of the clunky old furniture that we fill them full of. I'll bet if we refurnished those rooms with modern, efficient furniture, we could turn them not into doubles again, but triples. And that was done. And in the course of about 8 weeks, Janet and her staff sized up a new set of furnishings for each of those rooms in Morgan Hall, and come the arrival of freshmen, guess what? We had no temporary triple rooms, as Janet likes to brag, this year. We just had a whole bunch of new permanent triple rooms. And it's worked out amazingly well. Now, of course, the issue with freshmen is they don't know any better. Whatever they see when they arrive, you know, they think it's always been like that. And that's the great thing about teaching freshmen, because for about the first 6 weeks in the fall, they'll do exactly what you tell them to do before they get together with too many wise sophomores that sort of clue them into how you really behave in a university. And that's not unique to WPI. But even as the upperclassmen have come through Morgan Hall and seen what has been accomplished in the renovation, they have marveled at how spacious it still seems and how adequately it is housing our students. So you can only do that once, but I thought that was a brilliantly creative solution to the problem.